Welcome to the Radiant Black podcast. This is a show where friends chat about Radiant Black and the Massiveverse. I'm your host, Bash, and today I'm joined by my fellow hosts, Charlie, Matt, and Ali. We're also joined by two very special guests. First, we have C.O.W.L Higgins, co-creator and writer of Radiant Black. You may also know him from several other comic book series such as Nightwing, Batman Eternal, Batman Gates of Gotham, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Cal, No One, Ultraman, and many more. We are also joined by the incredible Joe Clark. You may know him from his work on several awesome books like Radiant Black, Deep Cuts, Supermassive, Ordinary Gods, and Moon Man. How are you doing today, guys?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having us on board.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, you've done a lot of work together. You know, clearly you guys are good friends. You have good rapport, and recently you've been doing a lot of comic book series together. So just tell me, I recently noticed as well that on Moon Man, Joe Clark has been co-writing as well. So what's the deal? Like, you guys just have a really good time working together? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, it's that. It's workload. It's kind of all of the above. We've worked on projects together for 25 years at this point, I think. I know. I did that math.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it was actually only kind of recently, like during the pandemic, when we were working on Ordinary Gods and Deep Cuts there. Well, Deep Cuts turned into working on Ordinary Gods together, and then Radiant Black and Moon Man, and it's just been it's a really great collaborative relationship, and people are constantly trying to prevent me from having a heart attack, so having help is really nice. And now the irony is I'm constantly terrified that Joe's gonna have a heart attack, so we're trying to balance each other out as best we can. But one of us has two kids and a whole other career, and spoiler, it's not me. So the comic stuff for Joe is like, I don't know how you have the time, but you seem to.
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, Kyle. I love working with you. I have a lot of fun.
That too.
It's fun to get to create stuff, and hang with your buddy, to send little texts like, hey, can we do this? And then get a prompt no. No, I'm just kidding. But,
no, it's not prompt. That's actually the truth. It usually takes me a minute to, yeah. But no, it's not always no. Sometimes.
No, I'm kidding. But anyway, guys, I don't know. I'm if you guys don't know, I have a whole other career in music and academia. I'm on the faculty of DePaul University and Northwestern University, and I'm a composer and arranger. So I'm writing a lot, and I've spent about almost 20 years just on that side of things, working for everybody from. I did horns for a Kanye West mixtape back in the day, and
did you ever get paid for that?
I think I made $100 at the end.
He didn't even throw in some Yeezys. Nothing.
You know what? This was pre-Yeezy. This is the pre-Yeezy era.
I had a Klondike bar. Come on. Oh.
Pre-Yeezy. We got to find a way to sneak that word in somewhere. But I actually never met the man. I just did the horn arrangements, and. But I wrote the kids shows for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Their Once Upon a Symphony stuff. I've worked with a whole bunch of people in a whole bunch of different genres, everyone from Chance the Rapper to Yo-Yo Ma, and I love it, and I love doing that. But when C.O.W.L called up, we talk all the time, but the first time it was like, hey, you want to write together? I was like, hell yes. It's a whole other way to be creative and a whole other way to collaborate. And I've learned so much in the process. And I think he and I have grown together a little bit, buddy.
Yeah. Also, this is the first time that I've heard Yo-Yo Ma's name after a rapper. And it made, for a split second, I had the thought that's a dope rapper name. On top of in context of Chance the Rapper and Yo-Yo Ma, it feels like that would be a really cool collaboration.
Make that A into an apt symbol.
There you go. There you
That would do it.
Yeah. This is just what it's like all the time. This is literally how the Catalyst War was written.
Yeah, actually, yes. Actually, this.
Well, we'll definitely get into the Catalyst War, but I wanted to ask you specifically, Joe, since you've kind of been on this writing journey with Kyle, whether it be Radiant Black, Deep Cuts, Ordinary Gods, what has been kind of your favorite part of that process? Maybe a specific issue or something that happened.
That's a really good question. You know what's funny is like one thing I've really learned through this is that like you can kind of peg what's supposed to be the important moments. Like, oh, this is going to be the big issue. This is going to be the big experience. And I've found as I keep going that the unimportant ones they're important. They're really, this is a false equivalency between these things. I've really enjoyed like an issue of like there's one issue of Ordinary Gods I really enjoyed that no one read, and I'm fine with that because I think we did a damn good job on it. And by the end, I was really proud of how that turned out. And as part of that, I think a big part of like of the art form, whether we're talking about comic books or jazz, it's just sort of this journey of just like sticking with it. You know, there'll be ups and downs, but it's like that's what I really enjoyed. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer. You know, it'd probably be more fun to say like Deep Cuts issue 4 because that was really fun. But like, you know, I don't know. The cliche answer is saying the next project, but there really is some truth to that. You know, what do you think, Kyle?
Cool. What was the question?
I guess it was about me.
Yeah. What was your? Should I answer what your favorite part of this was?
I guess favorite part of Joe working with you on those projects recently.
Well, in all seriousness, like part of it is being able to have fun. I've said it on like so many panels over the years, and it's like, but it's totally true. Like the best part of making comics is collaborating, but my favorite part is collaborating with my friends. And so when you have known someone as long as Joe and I have known each other, and it's just you trust each other. Like it's easy to be honest. It's easy to admit when you don't have an answer, and then it's about trying to find the answer, or there might be an answer, but it's not, you know, you're constantly searching for what the best version of a thing is. And I think pretty much everyone that we work with has an emphasis, and it's why we work with them. Everyone prioritizes and emphasizes craft and really wanting to make the best version of a thing that they possibly can. And it's like that, you know, it's being willing to commit to the bit, you know? And so I think my favorite part is when, Joe is someone who is incredibly well read and articulate on pretty much any topic you can imagine. It's infuriating and inspiring in equal parts. No, it's not infuriating. But it is really inspiring. And so it's cool when we can just head off the beaten path to try to find kind of a new course, whether it's through superhero comics or, history of jazz stories that we don't want to feel academic. No one's really done that before, like told a fictional story in the world of jazz that's historical fiction, except that none of the people are real. And it's also not like a textbook that's tough to get through. Like it's more about the actual players on the scene and on the periphery. And so again, just that like constant search for something new and what the best version of the thing is like, that's my favorite part of working together. And I think like I think there's a lot of overlap between, weirdly enough, between comics and music.
100%.
Certainly from the standpoint of writing, there's a cadence to both, and I think like having good time and understanding tempo and just like how to control the flow of a story and experience, like those have quite a bit of overlap, and so I think like that's been something that's been really fun for us to like gel and jam on, like the formalist component of it, like where the page turns are, like how we're structuring to best set up a joke or a gag, when we're using splash pages, when we're looking to iterate on the format or the medium, and I think we both get like a lot of enjoyment from that. I mean, like we watched when we were in high school, like we rented Memento and watched it together for the first time. Like, so it's like that is kind of baked into our kind of DNA. And so I just like, it's just nice to be kind of similar, like with Michael and Matt and Ryan and everyone, like to just be in the trenches with like-minded people who all have similar, like we all have crossover in influences and interests, but there are also quite a bit of disparate ones that we're all bringing to the table. And I think that just makes the stew a little bit, hopefully tastier, to mix metaphors.
Definitely. Oh, that's a good answer. I like that. And one thing I actually was kind of under a rock or something. I didn't know Joe did all this composing and music, which was the first time I actually learned of it. I was we're planning on doing a review of the C.O.W.L movie, actually, your first film, and we saw Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Or I saw Joe was composing on that. So I thought that was super cool to see. But a question I had about deep cuts is, like, personally, someone who's not completely into music. What is one thing, but I love the series, by the way. I absolutely loved it. But what is one thing, or like the biggest thing, that you would hope someone who's not like as appreciative or knows as much about music as maybe Joe does might get out of a series like Deep Cut?
For me, it's like,
oh yeah, you go.
Oh no, I started last time. You please. I'm sorry, go.
I think there's two or three things, and the main one I'm not gonna hit because it's Joe's, and I already know what. I mean, you know what it is. So, but for me, like, I think there's while you don't have to know anything about music to understand and hopefully be able to appreciate what goes into kind of the creative process. And similar to like when we tried, what we did with issue 3 of Radiant Black, where we were trying to capture that somewhat chaotic, unplanned process that can happen as you're writing, depending on the situation. I felt like Deep Cuts does a really nice job of getting to the heart of like what life as a musician looks like. Like issue 3, and Joe can talk about this in much more detail. Like, I think, I hope I'm not talking out of school, Joe, but like I feel like there's a lot of your dad in issue 3.
Yeah, sure.
In his life and how you guys grew up, and just, there's I just think like anytime you can get into what it's really like to be a part of something and there, as opposed to like the 10,000-foot view, that's the stuff that's really interesting to me. Like whenever I travel, I don't really like going. I mean, you have to go see the tourist spots, but like that's not really that interesting to me. Like I really like when I went to Paris, like I liked just kind of wandering around and trying to find cafes and find different bars and spots to just kind of sit and either work or hang out, or sometimes I didn't know where I was a lot of the time, and I enjoy that. Like I like just kind of trying to be more observant and kind of fly on the wall, so that you're just kind of a part of it. And I feel like this book gets really, really close to what that life as any sort of creator is, but also specifically when it comes to music and playing.
Yeah. I think I'm tickled that you knew exactly what I was going to say, because it for me, beyond all the music stuff, even it's about the illusion of failure. This dichotomy between success and failure. I don't think it exists. There are some quantifiable ways you can look at numbers and say this made money and this did not. But in the big picture of human creativity and ingenuity and art, and even beyond art, though, there's all of these stories throughout so many disciplines and so many real life stories that we were borrowing and reimagining about people who thought they hit a moment of failure. And maybe they died not knowing that they influenced so many people. They changed the world in so many ways. And there, I think we can think people like Van Gogh, but that's still someone who's famous. We still know who that is, and now they're famous. Now they've hit that success. But there's people who we will never learn their names, who are an integral part of this. And for me, reflecting on the humanity and the culture around that, and how we're all part of these larger connections, both in our own times and in the past and in the future. That's something I like to think about. And so I hope that through reading that book, that's something that not only comes through, but can also surprise at some moments.
That's amazing.
Good question, John.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you guys definitely just sold me on deep cuts. I kind of need that. I love these stories to make you feel good about being a loser. Kyle, your specialty with Radiant Black. When I saw a bank account and living back at home, I mean, I was living back at home with my folks during COVID, so it really hit home with the writer that need to get motivated. So I really like it in these stories. My question's a bit more Catalyst War oriented. I know you've been thinking about Catalyst War for at least before Radiant Black even started. What was there any major change between the inception of the idea and the execution? Is there anything completely different than where you thought you'd go?
Well, actually, before we do that, I want to circle back real quick. What the bank account gag in Radiant Black in issue 1? Yeah. What did you guys think on that first page? I'm going somewhere with this. I promise. I'm not just fishing. What was your reaction to that splash page when you first saw it?
This was the guy at the lowest point in his life. He was screwed. That's what I got.
He's done. There's no.
It's
it's
visceral. When you, the best thing I could compare it to is when you go somewhere and you have this feeling you forgot something and you keep thinking about what is it that you forgot, and you have this sense of dread. That's the sense of dread I had when I saw that page.
Yeah.
No, I kind of for me it was just right when I saw that, obviously, it was very gut-wrenching, but it was right away I just knew we were in for kind of something different, dealing with people with definitely a lot more real problems than are really explored in comics. So that was a super interesting start to the book for sure.
But I want to say that page to me was kind of the hook for the book, because a lot of times, if you're at the comic book store, you're flipping through it, you see a book that looks cool, you flip through the first few pages.
It has a poetic ending, because the first page starts with the bank account thing. The last page ends with Radiant Red coming out with the bags of money. So It's a really nice, it ties together nicely.
So to get back to the original question, what changed during the Catalyst War?
I'm sorry, Matt. I totally hijacked your question.
We got some good info out of that. I don't care.
I think that I remember sitting in a tiki bar with Kyle.
Oh yeah.
And it was right before one of my kids was born. I can't remember exactly when we had that meeting, but you had, all the bones were there. The bones of the story were there. But there were some big things that weren't. So what wasn't in the original draft is Nathan didn't die. That's a big one. That's a big juicy nugget I can throw out. And and neither did Nathan's dad in the other universe.
Oh, that's
so you'd think that would be the big plot point we'd be working towards, right? In that, but no, I find that to be interesting. I think it actually ties these two strands together. You know,
Okay.
that ultimately is what the growth of the characters and not just the big explosive moment.
Interesting.
Very
Okay. I have one last question about deep cuts. I'm sorry, I just love that book. So
Oh no,
really
sure.
want to get everything out of that before we move on to the Massiveverse stuff, because obviously we've got a lot to say there. But I'll combine the two questions. So first, there are two questions, but I'll combine them. So yeah, you're both writers on what I believe to be one of the best books of 2023/2024, which is Deep Cuts. So you're welcome. Yeah, it was fantastic. Thank you. So yeah, my two questions are: what was the inspiration for that story? And the other part is, you managed to balance the beauty of music and introspective reflection of jazz history and commentary on the human condition. So what was it like pivoting from something like Radiant Black and superhero comics, because that's what you guys were doing, like Radiant Black, Ordinary Gods, to something like Deep Cuts, which was a lot more different?
Well, it's actually the reverse, the order that's in reverse. So Deep Cuts came first, and Deep Cuts actually predates Radiant Black.
Wow.
So,
in fact, if you don't mind me tagging in here, another
no.
fun little origin story of this is I met up with Kyle maybe hours after you and Marcelo came up with Radiant Black in New Orleans.
Oh
Remember
my
that?
gosh, yes,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right.
Because Kyle and I were down there doing research for Deep Cuts.
Yeah.
I wanted to show Kyle the very first page of Deep Cuts is our protagonist Charles Stewart walking out of Congo Square. So if you know the history of jazz and the history of Black American music before jazz, that was one of the few places where African music could be freely performed and African religions could be freely practiced in the United States. And so wanted to really show that space and talk about why it was worth having like this big opening image of that. And and then we're walking around through the garden district, and you're like, yeah, and I'm thinking of calling it Radiant Black. And I kept joking that you were coming up with the Black Market narrative at the same time, or Black Market narrative, the name, right?
Yeah, I can't remember if I had that yet or not.
I don't think you did, because I kept saying you should call it the Spooky Boys, and we ended up writing in the Spooky Boys.
We did.
Into Deep Cuts. Yeah.
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 Well, Deep Cuts came. It actually came out of a conversation with Eric Stevenson, and so like, I was up in Portland. It was right after C.O.W.L in 2019, so that would be like April of 2019, and Eric wanted to talk about some stuff. I flew up there. We went out to lunch, and I think we were talking about actually like baseball, the idea of building something in the world. Oh, that's what it was. I think I was like pitching Pete Tomasi that because he loves baseball, and I was like, you should do a comic set in that world. And Eric was like, I've actually told Todd over the years, like, he should do that. Like, he should do a book set like within the farm leagues of Major League Baseball, and just like, there's like a whole world of within any sport of like, I'm a huge NFL fan, Chicago Bears fan, and so like, like yeah, I know the scout. We make our own fun, Joe. The scouting, just the scouting departments and the paths of like what that looks like. If you've ever seen the movie Moneyball, like they do a really good job of kind of like getting into some of the inner workings of that stuff in a way that's still like interesting and dramatic and is
the inside baseball, if you will.
There you go. Yes, there you go, Matt. There we go. Well done. I knew it was coming because I saw him unmute his microphone, and I was like, I knew it was coming. So I'm really glad you delivered. Unlike Brad Pitt in Moneyball, you don't strike out.
Wow.
So no. So but anyway, so we're talking, and Eric and I are both really big like jazz nerds, not to the extent of Joe certainly, but like Eric's got a really big music collection and library, and so like the conversation had like moved on, and then like out of nowhere he's like, you should do that thing we were talking about with baseball, you should do that in jazz. And we're like, oh yeah, can we like, can we do that? Like, will you publish that? And like on this, I was like, the only way I could do that is with Joe. And I talked about Joe before to Eric, and Back in 2014 when we did C.O.W.L, Joe actually did an original soundtrack for C.O.W.L, and the jazz album, which was put out through Sparks and Shadows, Bear McCreary's label. That album is actually like in universe with the comic, so it was kind of like the first time that we were kind of experimenting with some of that kind of like multimedia, kind of like in universe storytelling. And the way we had approached it then was like, think about like, the Miles Davis, like the Jack Johnson sessions. Like imagine like if somebody basically like commissioned these players to like write a concept album like around the world of C.O.W.L and the superhero union that existed, and they're like, it's happening as they're writing music and everything like that. And so I called you while we were walking back from lunch, and like just talking, like the three of us just on the phone on speakerphone talking about like making a really cool jazz comic. And
I was sitting right here, and I had a 10-month-old baby in my arms the whole time.
And it wasn't even his, which was the craziest part.
I had to give it back.
Yeah. But no, and then it was like, I mean, essentially like 5 years it took us working on it. And then, Radiant Black came together. Radiant Black was originally going to be something. Well, you guys have seen the hardcover, so like the Vanguard pitch, and like it was like a digital series and all that stuff. And then it turned into something else and something more, and then became Radiant Black. And I was on this like back-to-back convention trip between Halifax, Nova Scotia, and New Orleans. And so Joe came down for the last leg of the New Orleans trip. But like while I was in Halifax and New Orleans, like we were designing, like Marcelo and I were like G-chatting and designing characters like on the fly together, which was pretty cool. So, and I felt like it even then, like when by the time you got there in New Orleans, Joe, I remember feeling like, no, I think we've got something. Like I think this could really work.
I remember you saying almost exactly those same words.
Yeah.
Bash, did we answer your questions there? There's two of them. I'm spacing on one of them.
This is why we need Michael. We need an editor to like trim.
That was fantastic. And I guess one other question I have, just like a small one, is you guys had some incredible, like, I guess like part of it is like, there's also like a meta aspect to it, because, you're talking about like music, the history of jazz music in particular. And there's this like symphony of amazing artists coming together to create this, almost you could say, music in the sense of this comic book, right? One thing that you guys did was you had amazing artists on this book. Mm-hmm. And so like how did you decide on, it feels like uncanny how good the artists you picked for this book are. Like it fits so well. So like, how did that, like, did you have a specific list in mind, or how did you come about getting the artists for deep cuts?
Well, originally our intention was for one person to draw all 6 issues, but from the get-go, the 6 issues were 48 pages per issue. So it's really about 12 issues of standard comics, worth of material.
And I'm going to push back just a little bit, because we did have an artist that we were talking about as the first artist, but it became really clear just within like the first couple weeks, like, that there was a way to tell this story with a bunch of different artists to better tell the story.
Should I tell them who the artist was?
No, don't do it. Let him. No, don't do it. Right. Titillate. But the idea was also
he might draw that other thing we were talking about, the blue thing
with the pop up. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, and
it's like also I can't say that part. A crossover with. It's an existing character that has 3 letters.
Kill me. Oh my god! I can't believe we're doing this. Point is that like, one of the things was just like we wanted to have a really diverse cast of artists. Like we're telling a story about jazz musicians. We want to make sure we had a lot of representation. And like just because there's so many killing artists out there, and so many, like, that's the thesis of the book, right? Is that like there's so many great artists out in the world, and that like it takes a lot of people to tell one story. So So yeah, not to hijack too much there, Kyle. I'm sorry about that.
No,
But
it's okay.
you know, like I think we definitely had different versions of it, but it came very clear early on. It's like we've got to have a bunch of different people to tell this story, and the fact we got the people we did is unbelievable. You know, thank you for that, Kyle.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I'm happy they said yes. That's really what it comes down to. But no, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts about all this is like, I've done conventions for years and just, I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of really, really great illustrators on books over the years, but then also like getting to meet different creators whose work I admire, or new creators whose work I discover. That's my favorite part of going to shows is like, I'll always walk Artist Alley and look at like everybody, like who's doing stuff, like who's new, who do I not know? And then you have a Rolodex, and, that's how Michael's found some artists on our stuff for sure, but I think I've found everyone else. Like I think on all of our books, like I think I've cast pretty much every artist on it. So
Taking off my writer hat for a second and putting on my Kyle Higgins friend hat for a second, it's like this is a superpower that Kyle has had forever. And I was so jealous. I don't think I've ever told this to you, Kyle. I'm glad we're doing this in
am I
public.
gonna need another drink?
Maybe, but like, I would always like, even people I was working with, I'd get like a little, I can't, I don't want to talk to them, like I'm just who, and Kyle would just be like, hi, how you doing? I'm Kyle Higgins. We're friends now.
Oh yeah.
And like you've always like had this ability to like your friendship with Bear, all these guys at the conventions, you just go up and be like, hey, you're great in this. And it was never forced. It was not networking. It was just being a person. And I was always like, God damn. So that's a way, even beyond comics, I feel I've grown from being your friend, Kyle. So thanks for that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah, we joke about like how he's like the Nick Fury of comics, just like assembling these amazing teams and pulling it off. And we've yet to have that be disproven. Even the meta-ness of like with the Catalyst War of like, hey, you need help to do these, to overcome these obstacles, and you took on help. You had someone co-write as opposed to writing like 10 issues by yourself, trying to keep timelines together. You knew. And what specifically about Joe made him perfect to help you with Catalyst War?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it just, I don't know. Like you have a feel for certain things, and one of the things that I try to really pride myself on, my partner we're out with friends last night, and she's an illustrator and graphic designer, and our friends, one of them is an illustrator as well. And they were commiserating about how clients, especially in commercial spaces and environments, like they can't see what isn't in front of them. So like if you're trying to get a job, like designing products like art on a can, like whether it's a beverage can or soup can or whatever, like if you don't have mocked up cans in your portfolio, they just don't have this ability, whether it's out of fear, lack of creativity, lack of vision, like probably a combination of all three, especially in corporate environments where it's like, well, we don't know that they can actually do that, And I don't like to work that way. And I like to try to project on what I think someone can do. And sometimes I don't know what they would do, and that excites me kind of even more. And it's like blown up in my face sometimes in the past. Like I've miscast some people on some things, but more often than not, like I've gotten much better at being able to kind of like identify what I think will translate, what I know will translate. And then it's like, okay, if this, and this will translate to kind of this other genre or this other type of story or even this other medium, then I know like the rest of it I can help with, or I can help teach or get the person where they need to be, right? And like, I think like between deep cuts, I mean, the thing was like the first comic script Joe ever wrote was issue 1 of Deep Cuts. And like the first draft that you sent over before we started jamming on it together was really good. And it was like, holy shit, like this is like, I mean, Joe is someone I've talked story with for years behind the scenes. Like, I have like a little group of, like, I had for years like a little group of friends that we would share stuff with each other all the time. Like Joe and Brian Buccellato, and then in later years, Matt and Michael for sure. When I was doing Power Rangers, before we were doing, obviously this stuff kind of full time together. My friend, or our friend Jana that we went to high school with, and Alec for sure. Alec was my co-writer and co-creator on a bunch of stuff, and so it's just like you find people that you gel with and can riff on things with. Brian Buccellato, I don't know if I said him, but Brian's been one of my closest, yeah. And so I think like when we were putting Catalyst War together, it was more of a gut feeling of like, I think Joe can do things I can't do, and also like I know the ambition that this story is going to have, and like he thinks in a similar way. And so like, and it's probably the music background as well. Like you're not precious about things. Like it's like you like to jam, like you build on other stuff like musicians do, or jazz musicians do. So I think that was kind of, it really was just more of a feel than anything. And we were like literally at C2E2 the year that like the Massiveverse went to C2E2, like Matt and Michael were there and everything. We were there. I think that was 2022. It was the year we had the party in Lockport. And Joe had like already co-written some Radiant Black issues. And then we were still wrapping up Ordinary Gods, I think, and obviously doing deep cuts. And it was at the end of one of the shows, and we knew like no one hadn't been announced yet, but like it was coming, and it was a massive amount of work, as you could probably tell from the delays. But Ryan, we were all sitting at a table, and Joe wasn't there for this part. And Ryan, in a very Ryan way, just like looked at me and he's like, "You have to get," just out of nowhere, he's like, "You have to get someone to co-write Radiant Catalyst War with you. You're going to die. You're going to die. You have to do this." And like, kind of everyone, it was like this impromptu intervention, preemptively. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, And so then we I think I made the call like on the spot, and then I think I actually texted you or called you, Joe, and then like you met up with us for ice cream that night, and then we were like kind of off and running from there. So
interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thankfully, that did end up happening, and I can safely say we've all enjoyed Catalyst War. Joe joining you to help you co-write Catalyst.
Oh, that had happened. Yes.
Yeah. Glad that all worked out. So my question for you is, and I guess I'm just going to ask, and you tell me if you're comfortable answering it or not. Sure. But how do you feel about the vote, how it went, kind of the results? And if it did go the other way, as in Nathan winning, how much of that, I guess, did you have already planned if it went the other way?
Well, so that's kind of the cool thing about all of this, is that like the way that we approached this story, it was something where we didn't have it all figured out ahead of time by any stretch of the imagination, but we had enough of the major beats and where we were kind of going to land things. Mm-hmm. But most importantly is that we knew the arcs for the characters. And so this idea that Nathan doesn't believe people can change, and Marshall ultimately, that line at the end where he says, "You're wrong, people don't change, not by themselves," like that was from kind of day one. Like that was kind of like, we had that the whole time we were sitting on that, because that is what it's ultimately all about. And so if you think about it from that standpoint, you could go either way at the end with who's going to take over, right? Like it doesn't change the arcs. Like we knew the Marshall timeline was going to go batshit off the rails and where we were taking him. And that if it were going to be Marshall, that's kind of I don't want to call it bait and switch, but like the promise of the premise is you're following two divergent timelines, and the vote was who's going to be Radiant Black, not which timeline was going to survive and win. We have a little bit of an out where, the device disconnects the radiance from the wielders and everything. So like it's a little bit of a cheat from the standpoint of like how Marshall could then become Radiant Black in the Nathan timeline. But I think it's warranted based on like what is lost. I mean, 001 dies, like, Premier's cut off. Like, there are real changes and ramifications. So it gave us that kind of like one opportunity to choose again. That was Michael's idea too, actually. Like, Michael's the one that suggested that, and like cutting everything from existence, because now everyone's on their own. And if the point of the new way versus the old is essentially a version of like fate versus free will, then like the new way should be they're empowered without any guidance, and they're totally on their own. As far as the vote though, it was really close. And like we did, it's funny because I just got an email the other day, and this is your guys' fault, just so you know.
Oh no!
So
what do we do?
someone sent an email in basically saying that Eduardo on an episode of the Radiant Black podcast said that Nathan was originally going to be like Radiant Black going forward, even if he didn't win the vote or whatever. And I was like, I haven't even told Eduardo that I got this email. So I don't know what exactly he said. That's not quite true.
He said that originally you guys thought Nathan would win the vote. That's what he said.
Yeah, I think that's all he said.
That's what he said.
That's what
yeah.
he thought. That's what he and Marcelo thought.
No, I mean, the irony is, like, I knew from minute one it was going to be Marshall who won the vote, only because everyone's so vocal. Like, I get it. Like, Marshall is outwardly the more compelling, exciting character to be Radiant Black. But I also was adamant that I was like, well, I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And in particular with the direction that, like, everyone thinks like, oh, well, the story arc's more compelling. It's like, who the hell says it's going to work out for him? This is a creator-owned book. Like, you think he's going to grow and change. Like, you don't know that. Like, that's the pattern of traditional storytelling. But, and even after Catalyst War, like, you don't actually know where this is going now and what it's going to be like with him as Radiant Black. But yeah, there was like, but there was a version where I think the plan and how do I want to put this? I always was like, there was a version where we were talking about the story direction that, like, after the vote would be something else. And ultimately we decided that we weren't going to do it. And like, we're going to do what we ended up doing. And with that meant, and this was surprising to me, I was really excited about like what the book is then going to be, but I also found myself for like a couple weeks, I was like kind of sad, and I couldn't really figure out why. And I realized it was because I was low key kind of grieving a story that I was never going to be able to write, because like the direction, like what Nathan as Radiant Black would have been, is something that like just will never come to be. And like, I know like you do alternate timelines, but like we already did that. I don't want to do that. That's not the spirit of what I'm trying to say. Is like the main direction and drive of the book is now what it is. And so then it became like, I was glad I was able to get through that. I know the delays sucked last year, like epically, trust me. But the one saving grace from it all was that it gave Joe and myself a lot of time to make sure we were really refining things to work like in the best possible way. And so that like we could really nail the arcs with the characters, so that we could give Nathan like kind of not only a proper send off, but also in Nathan growing and changing, you understand why he is now trusting that Marshall can do the same and leaving him with the Radiant, And so, yeah.
No, that's really good. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting, kind of grieving the other story and what that is. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day you can kind of, I don't know, in a back matter or something, maybe give some hints onto what that could have been. I don't know.
Probably not.
Okay, fair enough.
but honestly, not mostly because I don't remember anymore. It's been
That,
it's in my
okay,
it's
that's very fair. That's
it's
very
in my
fair.
notebooks. I could dig it
I
up,
got
but
you.
it's
I
more.
got you.
It's like no. There's a lot of things that we're now doing that we were going to do with Nathan as Radiant Black, but they just take on a very different.
Yeah.
It's just very different because it's Marshall now, and so how those things are gonna happen and change, and maybe how they develop and where they go is gonna now be different. But the kind of like some of the setup and like the aftermath of Catalyst War, like that's stuff that would apply to no matter who was Radiant Black, at least from the starting point.
There's so many things that got pruned that are so interesting. Like even like I want to see Wendell and Ori, like see what their adventure is. We only got like a fourth of a timeline of that, right? Like there's so many good things that just can't happen that are just like thought provoking things that we'd love to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I wanted to address that.
The Ari and Wendell stuff, like think about it though, like that's actually from the Marshall world.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Damn.
Or a different world altogether.
Yeah,
You don't know where that fourth timeline in issue 18 is actually from.
That's
Yeah. Did you have a master list of the events, like what's going on in what timeline? Because it's confusing as hell as a podcast. I can't imagine keeping it consistent, like creating it.
Yes.
I don't think we had a list. I gotta say, like, I actually did quite well with I always kind of had it like in my head, like I knew.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that because like I'm used to like I'm in academia. I'm used to keeping notes, and then like once we just dove in, it was just very clear how it was two timelines. It's really just one story, and so like it was a rare occurrence for us to say, oh wait, no, strike that, repeat. There wasn't a lot of that actually. So I don't know why that is, but I'm glad it worked out.
Cool.
I think probably because of honestly, it was because of the formalism of the challenges. Like when you create a structure that is built on, there's going to be these many challenges for this character. Now you're creating kind of the same setup, the same situation for both characters to have to navigate, which then accentuates how different their responses are. But it also means that like it's easier to remember what happened in which because you're following two very different characters, and how that goes. We made one mistake, and I'm not going to tell you what it was. There's one line of dialogue in the whole book.
Yeah.
Technically, if you really think about it, that line of dialogue is not possible from that character because they wouldn't know what they would have to know to say that line. Because it was the other timeline's version of that character who experienced it.
You'll figure it out when we fix it in the hardcover.
Well, we already fixed it in the trade, so
great.
now you really won't know.
We'll have to compare. We'll have to do
Interesting.
some comparisons. Well, that's super funny. I had a more story-specific question for you guys, and you guys can both chime in what you think. I don't know if there was an actual definitive answer or not, but so we had the like you said, the batshit crazy timeline, Marshall's timeline, everything that kind of went from there. And I think a lot of people were under the impression that Marshall, he killed Eva and Satomi, and he took these radiants and he kind of took over and became the quote unquote bad radiant. But my question was he ever actually getting power hungry, kind of like he reminded me of like a Green Lantern Parallax a little bit, like Hal Jordan, where he kind of just went crazy. But was he doing all this? Was his plan the whole time to sacrifice himself and to do this for the whole timeline and save everyone?
No.
Okay. And then my second question is, we saw Wendell left the Radiant. He left the Radiant there. Did he know that Marshall at the end of things maybe was going to make the right decision and save everyone?
I think that's not. I mean, we're not gonna give you an answer on that. Okay. Is what I'll say.
Okay.
But it's.
There are clues in the text, though.
Yeah.
That's the way I took it. That is the way I took it.
I don't think it. I mean, look, there were so many permutations that Wendell went through, and over he says at a certain point in the story, he's like, I've seen to this point, I don't know beyond this, but he put them in a position where they have a chance anyway. And like, I always like described the two timelines as kind of like a Hail Mary, where he was like, I don't know who's better. And so it's like, let me create both because I'm hedging my bets for some version of survival, you know? But there's also an interpretation to be said for, through all the permutations that he perceived out and possibilities, it's like, well, there is a version where, you know, in some, I guess in some ways it's kind of like the Doctor Strange bit in Infinity War, where he's like, everyone has to die now so that they can come back 5 years from now for us to actually have a chance at, you know, winning, sort of thing. Like, that's the right combination of events. It's not that clean for Wendell in terms of kind of planning all of this and everything. But I think his actions gave them the best chance at having a possible win against Catalyst. Yeah.
Okay. And there was only one yellow radiant, right? Or I don't know if that was answered too.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of our idea, which was like, by the time he's breaking the timelines, he's now kind of more of like a multiversal being.
Yeah.
We had a gag that we didn't end up doing in issue. Was it 30, Joe, or 29? I think it was 30, where we were going to do a gag where you could see, it looked like it was going to look like there were holes in the page.
Yeah.
You're actually seeing through the hole to the next page.
That'd be cool.
That was in 30. Yeah.
But it was also because the donut shop is this kind of like,
Oh, that
do you see what I'm saying? Like, they're kind of two over one.
At times folding in on itself, kind of.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
That was one of those things where we went through all the effort of writing that damn thing, which you think logistically it's like, well, you have to figure out what's on the other page of this side, and then you have to figure out what's on the other page of this side.
We had it figured out.
Yeah,
but
it was all there, and then it was like, so this is what I'm talking about in terms of like not just going for the novelty, because that would have been like it would have gotten something, but like by the end we're like, it just doesn't tell the story the right way.
It's not
Even
worth
just-
it. Yeah.
The Wendell dialogue, like I felt like I had a stroke. It was so well done. Like you got this. It was crazy. Like what went into this and what's gone into this series. Like I think it's gonna be talked about for years. Like it's impressive what you guys have pulled off. Most people don't even try to attempt. You guys have pulled off crazy stuff in the series. Like one massive question going forward is just, is there something planned that's similar in scope to the Catalyst War for like issue 50? How do you have that? You must have something. I know you're always planning something. Is there something? Do you feel like you have to top it? Like how are you feeling about the series going forward?
I've been feeling tired is how I'm feeling right now.
For sure.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. And like, you know, we've been off stands for only a couple months here, but we haven't stopped. Like we've been jam-packed this whole time. I mean, there's all the books that you guys know about, and then there's other projects that you don't know about, and I'm not even saying in the Massiveverse, just like there's like a whole other job that I'm running that like, well, I think my name's in it, like that Arcbound book that Tom Hardy and Scott Snyder do. So I actually run that project, like I run that book, like behind the scenes.
Okay.
So I think I'm credited as like a project lead or something, but so there's a lot, and then there's like other books that we are developing, and there's other projects and different platforms that we're developing as well, and then there's the No One movie this coming year that Brian and I are literally writing the script right now, and there's another feature I'm writing.
Damn.
So it's that's all to say, Matt. I'm trying to dodge your question, basically.
Okay. It's all good.
No, we have. I'll put it this way: like I do know I have ideas through issue 50, like for sure. The stuff that Joe and I are talking about right now for the next couple arcs, we're still firming up like the specific moves of. But
It really feels like, and I don't mean to interrupt you, sorry, Kyle,
No,
but
go.
like it does feel just in the last week or so that like a corner has turned. You know, like one thing I really love about like Kyle, I remember you telling me what issue 200 was going to be. So like, you know, like you've been talking about this like the macro since the very beginning. You know.
I don't remember what that is, so you're gonna have to.
Oh, it's good. I'll tell you what it is, and I'll pretend I came up with it.
Was it the thing with the multiple spreads?
The little blue guys and the guy who eats cats. That one.
Oh, that yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right.
Oh, that the deep cuts artist is gonna draw. The
Yeah,
one who
that's the
didn't
same
draw deep
one.
cuts.
Yeah.
Wait, hey, Alf, is that the character you do the crossover
Oh,
with? Is it Alf?
I've never heard the man.
I don't
swear to
know
you.
what
It's a 3-letter character. I'm just kidding.
Little Bible reference for you there. No, but seriously, what the heck was I going to say? It was good. It was actually good. And I sort of went on this rant. Yeah, one thing I really enjoyed about this is that like that honesty can't really work if you have like the rigorous structure of like what a story has to be within this. And like there's always been even for something that has to be as formally structured as the Catalyst War, there's been an openness, and even with deep cuts to some end, which like also has a lot of interlocking parts that kind of have to like, you know, spoiler alert, click together at the end. Like there's always been this like the sense of like, well, what if we try it from this different angle entirely? What if HUD is 30 years older? What if you know, what if we can find a way to finesse this in a way to make it like a better cogent whole? And I think we've really hit something the last couple of weeks with these issues that I'm excited about. There's always this moment before that happens where I'm like, what are we doing? And then it locks it. It feels great.
Hell yeah. Love to hear that. I just want to confirm, because sometimes the solicits are wrong about this. Issues 31 and 32 have you and Kyle as co-writers. Is that the case?
That is the case.
Perfect. I'm so happy about that. Awesome. So
Me
you guys
too.
mentioned a few projects that you're working on that haven't been revealed yet. Are you guys also working on non-Massiveverse comic books together?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Moon Man is non-Massiveverse.
No, I mean like that haven't been revealed yet.
Yeah. There's one.
Okay.
There's one in particular that Joe would be writing and I'd be creative directing. And it's a pretty out of left field.
Yeah.
thing. So it'll be quite some time before you hear about it. Like quite some time. Like probably like my goal is for the whole thing to be done before it's announced. So
Beautiful.
we're still quite a ways away on it.
That's what I want to hear, especially looking at issues 31 through question mark needing to be finished.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're working on like tonight's gonna be an all-nighter for me. To get like we're locking lettering on 31 right now, and like it's fully drawn and everything and colored, and we've got like a really big kind of PR push that we're putting together for basically like our whole kind of Radiant Black return. We're calling it, you know, the rebuild and Massiveverse rebuild, and so it's everything for, you know, Radiant Black and Rogue Sun, but then, you know, book 2 of Infernal Girl Red coming up, and we're kind of anchoring every month to be something. I don't want to say something new necessarily, but something kind of significant. So like February is Radiant Black's return. March is Rogue Sun's return. New jumping on points for both books, very accessible. And then I can't say what April is. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. And then, but I will say, like, Supermassive Volume 1, like the trade is out in April as well.
Awesome.
And then, you know, some stuff for May, and then June, and yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I'm guessing the audiobook is also sometime this year, right?
That's one of the things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like, I don't want to be firm on this because like I haven't recorded anything yet. So, but like, you know, there's a world where May makes sense for that. It's something that's like, it's actually on my list for, I have to send some emails to some actors, agents, like tonight or tomorrow, like this week for sure. So it's like right there on the list as far as like we're moving into. It's just been, we wanted to make sure like we get the books back on track on time, you know, that's the most important stuff. And then as we're entering into like basically communicating with retailers and getting them to really kind of get on board and reinvest in us after delays and everything. And I mean, it's really tough. I mean, you guys buy monthly comics, you probably know there aren't a whole lot of books that are above issue 25 in terms of their numbering.
Yeah.
And
definitely
getting not only readers willing to jump on a book after, let's say, issue 25 numbering wise, is hard. Getting retailers to jump on a book after that is even harder. And there are a lot of stores that only order the Massiveverse books for pull list subscribers. They're not even stocking copies for the stands, which is a catch-22 because they'll say like, well, when a book gets to that number, it sells what it sells, you know? So, and then, you know, I would say, yes, but people can't find it if you're not putting it out. And they're like, well, but people won't find it. And it's like, well, but do you know that? Like, and so really we're trying to approach this stuff in some new ways as well, as far as like messaging and like, again, creating the jumping on points, making, you know, in the case of Rogue Sun and Radiant Black, like all those volumes are out. Radiant Black, all 6 volumes are out. Like we're running a sale right now for our Radiant Black catch-up sale. If you go to radiant.black/catch-up, not the condiment, but the word catch up in CATCHUP, you can get all 6 volumes right now for 15% off through the Black Market store. And then if you're not already a Black Market newsletter subscriber, when you sign up for the newsletter, you get a 10% off code, like a one-time code. So if you were to sign up right now, you could actually, you can apply it. It's stackable. So that 15% off becomes 25% off on volumes 1 through 6 right now. And then we're going to do something similar with Rogue Sun as we're kind of gearing up here. And then we've got a whole bunch of other like pretty crazy marketing things that we're working on for both general awareness, but also for like messaging to retailers that like, we're back. This is a universe. This is what we're doing. We've now been doing it. We're going into year 5. Everything's accessible. Like even with no one, like there's a movie coming up. Like we're trying to like we're in this for the long run. And one of the problems in the industry right now, and you hear stores complain a lot about, is there are so many books that are, there's just too many like miniseries. Everything's like 6 issues, you know?
Yeah.
There's not enough ongoing series. And again, it's a catch-22 because then when you do an ongoing series, like it's hard to find that level of support. And I know like when you're late, like we were last year, like that's on us. Like that makes it even harder. But I think, I mean, you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, you know all the inner workings of what we're doing and putting out. Like the stuff we put out last year between Catalyst War and No One is like not only very ambitious, but it was very multifaceted. So there was a lot to it. And so that stuff just, you know, I don't want to say we bit off more than we can chew, but we bit off more than we can chew in some ways. And then it becomes like the most important thing is that it's good. Like it has to be good because no one's going to remember that it was late. They're only going to remember if it sticks the landing.
Yeah.
Right.
The Neil Adams thing. Yeah. I will say, I think like Image Comics should do a thing where, because I know a lot of you guys, like including Radiant Black and I'm fairly certain Rogue Sun, like you have the first issue free up on the Image Comics website. I think Image Comics should do, like someone who's worked as a retailer in the past, like they give out these image solicit magazines now. They started doing them in print. I think if you have an ongoing, they should just have a QR code like for each new solicit and just be like reading the number 1 free right now. Like if you're interested, because it's just like, why not? Like you can probably get more readers that way. I can guarantee it. Like someone's has like QR code and they could read the first issue right then and there. That could give them enough of a sample. It's like giving out free samplers, you know, like outside like a restaurant or a cafe or something. So I'm curious why Image doesn't do that, but yeah. Otherwise, I guess I have a few, we have just 2 or 3 more questions that we're gonna wrap up here.
Yeah, no,
One
no
of the
worries. I just messaged Michael to see if if he's around, if he wants to jump. Because I was gonna tell you guys about something, but I don't know that I'm allowed to. So
okay,
Poor Michael. I just pictures like
Poor
one day
Michael.
off or something. He's getting called in.
no, it's
Yeah.
Monday. He's ahead of us, so it's Monday afternoon
Oh,
for
okay.
him. So it's a work day, like
It's also there's
Sunday
something
night
magical.
for all of us. But
Yeah, there's something like magical about like you going off to like you guys are like finishing the final lettering on Radiant Black like after you're interviewing this. It's kind of cool. I don't know, being such nerds and fans of this stuff. It's pretty cool to see this where we're at in the history of the series. I don't know.
No, that's awesome. So back to the Catalyst War.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, we loved everything, the collaboration, everything. But one thing we noticed that we were actually asking Ryan Sidoti of Circle Guy News and Visible Podcast. You guys know him, like obviously Kyle knows him. He's done the special thanks credits in the Radiant Black books recently.
yeah,
We were
it works
asking
for
about
me.
the poem. Yeah, there you go. We're asking about the poem, right? The poem that's in Radiant Black 30.5. We all loved it. We thought it was amazing, very well written. At first, I actually thought it was like the Tom King thing, where it's like a real life poem that you just like put in the book just to like contextualize everything. Then I realized, no, like this dude wrote it. So
I saw you
the
guys
first
talk
thing,
about that. Thanks for
Yeah.
being so effusive. That was
oh
really
no,
nice.
loved
That's
it.
great.
No, thank you. Yeah, so the first thing we did, we're like the Scooby Gang. We're like, we got to figure out who did this. So we messaged Ryan, like, who did the poem? And he's like, you know what? I don't know. He's like, let me message Kyle. So we finally, all that got done. We finally got the answer, which was Joe Clark did the poem. So my question is, how long did it? First of all, here 3 questions in one. Sorry. So, what was the impetus for the poem? Like, when did you decide, like, or how did you decide, like, yeah, this is gonna work. We need to put it here. Obviously, the context, it works, but like, what? And then it's like, how long did it take you to write the poem? And I guess this ties into the first question: was what was the inspiration behind it?
Well, how much do you want the magic ruined? Is the question.
You know what? You mind if I tag it on this?
Go.
So, a very late in the process, I think maybe just like a day or 2 before lettering had to be finalized.
I'm not even finalized. Approved at the printer.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we had written a eulogy, like a proper eulogy, and we, I think it was still pretty good, honestly. I think that was something where, yeah, and
you know what?
and
Hold
Kyle-
on, just to jump in, it was because Becca lettered it, and Becca wrote to us when she sent us the file. She was like, "This." She's like, and by the way, she's like, in the eulogy, she's like, I cried. And I wrote back and I was like, well, we have changes. I think you're going to cry more, but we're finishing this. And this was all in the span of about 24 hours, but it was really good, the eulogy. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Joe, I think I suggested it because it's the opening of 25 that he was supposed to write a poem as a group project, or did you suggest it?
We said it essentially at the same time.
That's right.
And what it was you were like, I'm gonna reread from volume 5. We're gonna read it all the way through. And I was like, yeah, let's go, let's fucking go. And then like we started reading it, and then like I literally don't remember which one of the 2 of us was. It was like, oh shit, we need to write a poem. It has to be a poem. It's in the text. Like, oh, we gotta write a poem. And it was like, okay, we have to write a poem now. Yeah. I remember it was like a Thursday, and I was like, thank God this wasn't like a day when I had to go to class. It was so.
It wasn't a Thursday. I know exactly what day of the week it was.
What was
because,
it?
So we did it. We did it on a Tuesday night because I stayed up all night finalizing, or no, maybe you did it on a Monday night, but basically then we had to make a call on it, and Michael was the one who was like,
you're right.
Michael's like, do the poem, he's like, the poem's good, he's like, it's different, he's like, do the poem. And so then Tuesday night I was up all night adjusting final dialogue on 30 and 30.5. I got about 2 hours of sleep because on Thursday morning I had to fly to Baltimore for Baltimore Comic-Con, and so while I was at the airport, it was like 6 a.m. we got the proof from Becca, and so we were texting while I was going through security line like, making final what we thought were final corrections, and then on the plane, I with like plane Wi-Fi, which is atrocious. I proofed on it was like I think I took all 5 hours on the plane to write up every single last note to bring it all together. And then during the convention, there was one final tweak when it was literally sitting at the printer on Friday, and it had to be approved by 5 p.m. And I went in, and remember, it was the Eva gag. We had missed Eva in the art, and when she pops up in the double page spread in the background, and she's like on the phone, we lettered it before colors were in, so we just missed. There's a little Eva in the background, and we're like, oh, this balloon should be split out, and it should be, you know what I'm saying? Like you should see her with a tiny balloon in the background, like answering the phone, and then we hit approve. Yeah, so it was very late in the game.
And I've always loved poetry. I mean, I'm just really interested in things that are the arts that make the least money, jazz music and poetry. And but actually, the very first time I ever wrote a line of dialogue for comics was Kyle gave me this opportunity.
Can I tell the story?
Please do, yes.
Similar situation, an all-nighter. I was doing Nightwing, and I was very new, obviously, to doing comics, but just writing full time. I was like 26, I think, when I was doing that book, and it was a very, very stressful time at DC, especially in hindsight, that era. And it was issue 5 of Nightwing, where Nightwing goes to New Orleans, and he ends up fighting a demon. And Joe pointed out that when Alan Moore does demons, they all speak in iambic pentameter. And so that's a great idea. The night before the issue has to print. And so it was
and you were like, we're not doing that unless you want to do it. I'm like, please.
So Joe helped out, and we wrote the rhyming demon and iambic pentameter that, by the way, to this day, no one has ever said anything to me about it. No one has. I don't think anyone before this podcast, anyone did it.
Wow.
But that's when I say commit to the bit, that's what I mean. Like, it's for love of the game. Like, that's the version. Like, that's the better version. And so that's what we had to do. You know.
Yeah. God, I know you've seen this, but I just wanted to say this is that's your Nightwing. Oh, sorry. That's your Nightwing right there with Talon.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, literally.
I have notes on the costume. Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was very, very happy to get that. I still I always say, like, I sincerely wish Todd sent one to every creator, just as a, like, you know, like, thank you. But I know they don't, but kind of wish they did.
No, I've got Power Ranger action figures over here of like Lord Draken and stuff that like I had to go buy. Like they don't send you those
makes
things.
Me sad. Yeah. But thank you for that that amazing story. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, the poem is amazing. I remember like thinking, like, we were all pretty emotional. And I gotta say to both of you, it took everything not to just scroll or like go to the last page to see who won. Like, I know some people did that too. They messaged. They were like, "Oh, I couldn't wait." I just
at the comic book store, they did it at the store. At the store,
but like, I couldn't wait to see what. I'm like, no, I gotta experience it. You know what I mean? Either way, I'm gonna be happy, right? So, yeah, it was such an amazing way to end the like. It was obviously.
Well, in that page where Nathan and Marshall have the conversation and they decide, you know, who it's gonna be and everything. And Marshall has the line like, "People don't change, not by themselves." So Eduardo actually redrew that page very late in the game as well, because again, we wanted to make sure we nailed this. And I have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to endings, and like, I don't think like my Power Rangers run, like I didn't stick the landing, and I like of Shattered Grid, and there were a variety of reasons, but ultimately it's on me narratively. And with what the limitations and the parameters that were put on, what basically I had to put the toys back in the toy box at the end of it all, but also like I was adamant that like it has to feel like it mattered and has pathways forward. And I also knew that like, and what happened was the closer we got to that last issue, the more Saban was like, are people going to feel like this doesn't matter? I was like, yes, I've been saying that for like a year and a half. Like we have to like, so I came up with the concepts well before that of like teeing up Marguerite Bennett's run, where essentially like you're doing essentially like Battlestar Galactica with like Rangers on a ship out of time trying to find their way back home, but trying to find their way back into the remade new universe, right? So you could do that for as long as you want to do it, and you have all the Rangers there, and it feels like there's progress, like it mattered and things are moving forward. And it also bought editorial and Marguerite and then Ryan time to convince them to like let us push things forward, you know. And same with like the Omega Rangers and stuff that I kind of like I kind of gave that concept over to Ryan and everything on my way out. But the last issues of the book itself, I didn't feel like we nailed. And so with this, like that was in the back of my mind the whole time of doing Catalyst War, even with all the delays and everything, which was just like, I want to make sure that it's not like, hey, 3/4 of this were really, really cool. And then in the end, it just kind of like, it ends, you know? And so like Joe and I spent a lot of time on 30 and 30.5, like breaking it and re-breaking it.
Yeah.
And like Michael really pushed back against the idea of like Nathan getting overtaken by the robot early on in 30 and 35. And it's just like, it's because it's tough to do in the amount of page real estate that we had for those last two issues and everything. And I was adamant. I was like, no. I was like, this is good. I know how to make this work. And like, it feels like an escalation, but it's unexpected. And then how we come back from that. And if he can convince the robot to essentially rejoin him, like the moves work really well. And it's just all of that. It's like, we just wanted to pull out all the stops and just like, and particularly the action across 30, or maybe it was 30.5, choreographing the cross-cutting of the action. And like one thing leads to, you know, you're with Eva and then she's talking to Marshall and then you're with Eva and then the ship from 001 comes in and then you're with 001 and then Premier comes in and then carries you to a different section. And then like all of that, it was like really important to me that like we like really make this work so that we can also then actually then land the plane like in a way that like I'd be really proud of. And I am, like, I could not be more proud of how we ended this story. And so to your original question, Matt, of like doing something more ambitious, like maybe, but it all comes out of story. It comes out of narrative. And like, I would not have thought I would try to do something bigger than Shattered Grid after I did Shattered Grid. And I think this was like much bigger than Shattered Grid, despite having, you know, far fewer characters. I think it was much more ambitious and definitely more narratively and emotionally complex. And so see what the future holds, I guess.
Yeah, I think as long as you bring in Dr. Doom, Robert Downey Jr. to play Dr. Doom, so you'll be able to recapture that magic. I do really. It's interesting about Nathan being taken over by the robot. That Michael was pushing back on that. I kind of like that as like the machine tried to like as like a metaphor for like maybe thematically. Maybe I just dive too much into stuff, but you could think of how he fought off the machine in L.A. Like it almost ate him alive, right, and kicked him out, but he still found his own way of overcoming. So you know, there's a lot you can kind of like draw from that. And I don't think that was like. I thought that fit, but anyways, Bash,
it was more. It was. I should clarify. It was more pushing back from a logistics, a place of logistics. Like, we're trying to accomplish a lot of things with finite space, and also like, this is the last time Nathan gets to be Radiant Black, and so we want to make sure that we are sending him off with big moments and heroic moments. And if you're spending half an issue or the whole issue where he's the bad guy, essentially. It's like, is that doing the character the best form of justice? And I was like, no, but I can do it. Like, I know I can thread the needle. I can get him free by the end of part 1. It can work. And then once we did it, he was like all on board with it and everything.
Okay.
But Sorry, that just gave me a thought, and I forgot it. Shoot, what was it? What was I gonna say? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't remember. It'll come to me.
Hopefully it comes back. But I say for me, at least as a fan and a reader, it was a little bittersweet, of course, seeing Nathan be Radiant Black the last time. But for me, it was a little bit satisfying because we got to see him be heroic, problem solve, and kind of embody himself as Radiant Black. And I feel like you guys did a pretty good job too with like tying up loose ends. Like it kind of flew really well. The one thing that really stuck with me, and I guess I'm curious to see how you're going to answer this, but is there really a fifth Radiant? Like, is there anything you could say about that right now?
What do you mean by fifth Radiant?
Forgot which issue it was
like
in.
if there's a mention of there's one other Radiant.
He collects when Marshall collects all four, right?
Oh, in Supermassive?
He says I have them all. I forgot if it's in Supermassive or in a regular issue, but he collects all four, and like the existence voice says no, not all, or like there's two left.
That's because no, it's in Supermassive.
Okay.
There's not another Radiant. It's specifically referencing the fact that Radiant Red from the Nathan timeline is over there.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
So he's going, I've got them all now. There's just one more left because he's got premieres, and one more is yellow. And then the voice is going, no, there's two. And he goes, you're lying. And then the voice says, there's only truth in existence. And that's the low-key tee up to like, oh, they've come over here. And so so Tomi's over there with the Red Radiant. And so it's like, oh, so there is technically another one. It plays with, and that's where like there's only being one Wendell, or like Wendell is a merged version of both. Like he's kind of this multiversal, donut god at this point. Like it plays a little bit with the rules in that way, but yeah, no, there's not a fifth Radiant.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Kind of. Not ending it. I have a couple more questions, but so Marshall, kind of the point of Marshall saying like he can't change alone, and we saw Nathan's growth a lot, kind of changing his perspective in that sense. But what do you guys think? Is there like what's the main thing that changed in Marshall, do you think, that will hopefully make him become a good Radiant Black in the future? Fingers crossed. But what's the main thing?
I have an answer, kind of. But Joe, I'd be curious what you think here.
What changed with Marshall? Well, where we start with him, I think we all might know people like this he's so insulated from reality. Like not even the beginning of Catalyst, the beginning of the series, He's so insulated from reality that like he can't possibly lose in his own mind. There's no risk, there's no reward, there's just sort of snark. There's a total lack of substance, and through like and through getting to a position where he's had power and lost it, where he was Radiant Black and then had to be, for lack of a better word, a sidekick. Sidekick's not accurate here, but you know what I'm saying. Like there's a maturing process in that. It's no longer about like him convincing himself that everything's copacetic, and like by getting to a place where he has some sort of bigger picture of the world. I think that's really, really changed it. So that when he ends as the hero, he has a bigger idea of what it means to be heroic, because he's had it, lost it, and got it back. And without hitting every single beat. That's just kind of what I'm thinking. What do you think, Kyle?
Have you guys ever seen Surf Ninjas?
I have to now.
Can't say I have.
No.
Man, Kyle, I expected like 80 things from you, and none of them were Surf Ninjas.
That's why I wanted you to go first. No, there's a thing. Now, granted, I haven't seen it since I was like 8 years old, but there's a character in Surf Ninjas. spoiler alert, they like to surf. Okay. And they go out into the beach every day, and this group of friends, and they surf. But there's this one friend who carries a board. He's all in. He's the one that's most excited. And then every time they get to the beach, every single day, he's like, there's always a reason not to go in the water. And he's like, oh no, I gotta like, oh, I'll meet you guys out. I gotta, my board's got a weird, I gotta wax my board. And he ends up spending the entire day on the beach, like fucking around with the board or doing the whatever. And they're like, are you gonna surf or not? No, he's gotta. And he never surfs. And so by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, I think he surfs. I assume he surfs. But it's a weird, for whatever reason, it has stuck with me like my whole life. And just that idea of like you can spend so much time loving something but focused on like the wrong parts of it. So much so that you're not actually engaging with like the spirit of the thing itself. And a lot of times it's because it comes down to like, you can't fail if you don't try. Like that's the old, it's a cliche, but it's true. And like, I think Marshall has gotten to a point where he's willing to take the swings. And I think the biggest thing that's changed with him though, it's hard to like, you're going to have to see what we're doing in 31 and beyond.
Yeah.
So I got to be careful. I don't want to spoil anything here. But I think the aspect that's that's most different now is like, he has gotten something that very few people ever get. He basically got to see the cautionary tale of his life and actions. And what's cool is that readers got to experience it in real time, because you watched from Split, not knowing that was even going to happen. You got to watch this Marshall that drawn by Eduardo, who's drawn all the Marshall-centric issues for the prior 3 years of Radiant Black. You got to watch Marshall go down and make this path and make these choices that are wrong, and you get to see why. And to some extent, he now got to see that as well. And he doesn't have the answers necessarily, but he got to see how bad things can go.
Sure.
And I think that there's, how many times do we in our day-to-day lives think about like what could have been? And we don't usually think about like how bad things could have gone or could have been. Like sometimes I find myself thinking about like my regular day-to-day life of doing whatever, like whenever something happens and something bad almost happens, right? And you think like, holy shit, like I'm so glad that didn't happen. That could have been really bad, right? But like how many times, or when something really, really, really bad happens, like I tore my ACL on a fluke in 2018, and I've now had 6 knee surgeries in the last 6 years, including like 2 cartilage transplants, and I can't really walk. Like I can't walk more than a block. Like it's awful. Like I haven't run in years. Like I can't do much. Like my life is fundamentally changed from that moment. And it's easy to think like, oh, what would have happened had that moment not ever happened, right? But you often probably don't think about how just regular events in your day-to-day life that go totally as planned and they go off without a hitch. Sometimes I think to myself like, well, and how many other timelines did something terrible happen when I was walking down the street right now because I did whatever, a thing that I didn't do here, like it's just a way to be appreciative and grateful for like even the like mundane and the sense of normalcy, because there are definitely worlds where the weasel fucks with the particle collider, and we end up in the shitty timeline we're in right now, but end up in an even shittier one, Yeah. And so I think like for Marshall, like having that weird view of the what could have been in such a negative way is something that is going to change him. But how it's going to change him is, you're going to have to pick up Radiant Black Rebuild, kicking off with issue 31 in February, to find out for yourselves.
That's cool.
And it's
like
not
that.
going to be in ways you think, and it's not going to be. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
That really
Awesome.
reminded me actually of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, of course.
A24. But yeah, that's kind of that point exactly. Like where you're always hoping about what things could be better, but at the end of the day, kind of what you have is probably the best thing that you could have got for sure.
Well, it's the only thing you've got. Like,
Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's true.
I say
but
this. I say this.
yeah,
My
go
girlfriend
ahead.
will tell you. Like I say this all the time. Like you make like a friend of mine said this to me at another friend's wedding like 10 years ago, and the friend that said it, I'm pretty sure he was in the CIA, but he wasn't able to say. I'm not actually sure, but he told me he was like, you made the right decision, and it doesn't even matter what it was about. He's like, you made the right decision, and he's like, because with the information that you had available. That you made the best decision you could with the information that you had at your availability, which means you made the right decision. Just because you might get new information down the line doesn't mean that the decision you made when you made it was wrong. And
I like that.
And so it was like, oh, it's like that's actually like really that's really reassuring. And like also now looking back on it, like totally a thing that somebody says who's like blown up a bunch of people accidentally in like another country like with a drone.
Yeah.
I don't want to unpack it too much, but
Yeah.
That's
Big
super
Cecil
interesting.
energy.
I like that. Just
Jesus.
my last one for Joe. I had a quick question, and I haven't read the last couple issues of Deep Cut, so maybe the answer's in there. I'm not 100% sure, but kind of in the back matter. It seems like you've had a lot of your good friends. Was it Thaddeus? There's Quentin Coxum that came on and kind of wrote a piece. All kind of seemed like different pieces in the back of each issue. And one I thought Quentin Coxum's like he's really into basketball and comics, which are my two favorite things in life. So I thought that was kind of pretty funny. But I just want to wonder if maybe if I was a little more talented, I could play them myself, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But is there a way to like listen to these, or like is there anyone who has actually played them yet, or is there a way to access these?
Yeah, I'm not sure if all of them have been recorded and performed. Well, I mean, I think all of them have been performed. Not sure if all of them have been recorded, I should say. So Thaddeus and I have a big concert coming up. Actually, if you're in the
neat
Illinois area, we're playing with the headliners for the Frank Mantooth Jazz Festival at New Trier High School on February 8th, and I'm actually arranging one of his tunes, like probably when we get off this call. And
I'm working on a comics and basketball thing when we get off this call. I'm not kidding. Like that's literally
yeah.
You're a big basketball guy too, right, Kyle?
I am. Yeah.
I love the Nighthawk run, like the basketball stuff in there.
Yeah, that was really that
Oh,
was, that
Dark
was
Hawk,
awesome.
yeah.
Dark Hawk.
Yeah. But getting back to what you're saying, I know Thaddeus is going to go hit the studio soon with his tune. The one cent that Quentin Coxum tune has been recorded. So if you go to Spotify and type that in, like he's got a beautiful recording.
That's the one I wanted to hear, so I'm definitely gonna go.
That's a really great tune. Marcus Carroll's tune.
Do you want to make a tease, Joe? Do you want to tease the thing?
Can we? Well, yeah, I guess we can say that. Actually, I can say on because I'm public record now. In addition to the songs in the back of the book, all the songs in Deep Cuts are real songs. I wanted to make sure that we had like the actual songs because. Charlie, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but by the end of the book, those songs add up. And so we wanted to make sure that they were real and substantial. Awesome. And you may have heard we recorded the song from issue 2 already. The song "I'm Just Here for the Music," and in last fall we got a grant. Actually, it's kind of a competitive grant for this Pathways for Jazz to record the Deep Cut soundtrack album.
Ooh, congratulations!
That's
Thank
exciting.
you.
That's
that has to be done by the end of this year per the agreement for the grant, which is why one of my other tabs right now is another grant to cover the rest of it. But yeah. So in addition to the songs in the back matter, the actuals, any song that somebody's playing in the book, we essentially have it. I even have a couple songs that are just sort of name dropped 1 or 2 times, just to have the world filled in. And so I'm really excited to get an absurd number of musicians together and record everything from ragtime to yacht rock on that one. So,
And I will find a way to play trumpet on some of these.
Oh,
you're already in the proposal, so you better.
that's so cool.
I'm just glad Yacht Rock got mentioned finally on the podcast. I've been waiting. I can retire now.
Yeah, gonna do major things for your SEO, Matt. Podcast is about to find a whole new audience.
Let's go.
Oh, it's true. Guys, thank you, first of all, so much, both of you, Kyle and Joe, for joining us today, for being gracious with your time, always being kind. And we've had Kyle on quite a few times before. It's always a pleasure. We have such a good time, but we've really been looking forward to meeting and talking with Joe. So thank you for joining us today, Joe. Of course, we would love, the door's open. We'd love to have you back anytime. We'll probably, knowing us, we'll probably ask you again around like when the first issue of Rebuild comes out afterwards. Probably, get you guys back on, talk all things Massiveverse and whatever else gets announced by then. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. And for everyone listening, we are doing a giveaway. We are giving away the Radiant Black Year 1 hardcover, right? We have a brand new one, unopened, all that shit. So, collects the first 12 issues. It has amazing back matter. The back matter is so good. The day I read the whole thing. Like literally, just never left just until I read the whole thing. It was amazing.
Wait till you see volume 2 if we do it.
Ooh, there you go. A better push to get the book than that. And please, if you haven't checked out Deep Cuts, please go read it. Honestly, genuinely, one of the best comic books out there. And like Joe said, the conversation we were having earlier about comics making you feel something, art making you feel something. I promise you'll feel something. I think I was telling the guys, just purely in terms of vibe, right? I remember telling, it was Ali. It was like, dude, This book is awesome. It's like watching Inside Llewyn Davis, but in a comic. It's like brutal, but I love it. And every issue is, it's a completely different story, but it all ties together by music and jazz. So incredible artists and everything. So please go give that book a chance. The trade's out now, and you can find the single issues. And yeah, they're all super thick, nice square bound books, 48 pages, gorgeous artwork. You can't go wrong. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time. We're going to probably do a few things between now and the return of Radiant Black. Probably do something like trivia and all that, and we'll have some prizes and everything. So yeah, until then, stay radiant, everyone. See you later.